We will let you do the start of the meeting and then we'll introduce Mr. Perry.
All right, it is time. So let us begin our July 21st annual meeting. I believe we do have a quorum. We're missing a couple of folks, but that still gives us a quorum. I would like to remind everybody that we do work at the pleasure of the county commissioners. We do not have a power of authority, but we do have a large responsibility in advising and making recommendations to the county commissioners. And let us be aware, especially in this time, of the upcoming changes that we're looking to see of those responsibilities. And let us do our utmost to fulfill those duties to the citizens of Scotland County. First item on our agenda is approval of minutes from the last meeting. And I take it that everybody's had the opportunity to read those minutes. Anybody has a motion and a second, I'd like to have them.
I can't do it because I wasn't here.
Sure.
Okay. I'll make the motion to approve it.
Second.
So moved, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And on to our new business, and Brooke, if you would be so kind as to make the introductions.
Can I interrupt you?
Sure.
And we need to approve two sets of minutes. The minutes from our last meeting we did not approve, so the ones you just approved was from last month's minutes.
Okay, you want to?
And that's in the old
You've got that
business.
as old business. That would be after this, according to the agenda.
At this time, that's fine.
Okay.
I get what you're saying completely. I would like to introduce Mr. James Perry, and he is from COG. He's going to be going over the presentation for the 160D.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Perry, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Is right here okay?
Yes, wherever you're comfortable.
I apologize. I actually had this presentation on PowerPoint. Stopped by the office on the way here, and our servers were all down, and there was no way to put it on the flash drive and leave it with me. So I'm doing old school, old tech. You have the presentation, and I'm just going to go through it with you like that. My name is Jim Perry. I am the former director of the Lumber River Council of Governments. I semi-retired in 2012, but have been working as a part-time planner, which was my background. So I've been around this region. We work for Bladen, Hoke, Robertson, Scotland, and Richmond counties, and was started as director in 1981. So I've been around working in Scotland County and the towns here for, I guess, 40 years or so. So well acquainted with what's been going on here over time, and look forward to working with you. I will tell you up front, I told some of these gentlemen out in the hall, I am the third string pitcher tonight. I am a planner, but I work a lot more with infrastructure and water resources and some other things. A lady named Jean Klein, who is our department director, was going to be here tonight, and she will be here with you in the future. She will be the one working principally with you. And another lady named Jan Maynard, who's also a part-time planner with the COG, may be here with her. Those two people will be here with you in the future. And they are well versed in this stuff and much more able to lead you. They're working right now, I guess, 14 or 15 other units of government in our region doing exactly what you're doing. So you're not alone. Everybody else, especially the counties and the smaller jurisdictions, are scrambling to try to meet this requirement. And so they've got a lot of experience under their belt, and certainly a lot of experience with this. So my goal tonight is an introduction. And starting the next time you meet, you are going to get in the weeds, and you are going to have to go through quite a bit of material. It's going to take some time, but it's going to be well worth the effort. Where did all this start? It started, I was talking to Brooke a little bit, all this started with the city and county attorneys and their association. Every county and most every town has an attorney on record that they work with. Ed Johnson is yours. And a few years ago, basically in some meetings that they were having, they were all realizing through the work that they were doing that they were having more and more difficulty defending and working on the legal aspects of some of the zoning and subdivision cases that were coming up. And part of it was due to what they felt was some vagueness about the statutes, about how you do zoning and subdivision regulations. It just felt like it just needed to be beefed up and worked on. So they went to the General Assembly and said, look, from a legal perspective, you guys need to do some clarifications and some work for the local governments. And that's really where it started. And then the planners from the various jurisdictions were asked at the table, and they brought their perspective. So I would tell you that sometimes what the General Assembly does is not always in agreement, but this is one thing that folks did agree on, and I think the consensus is this came at a good time, and it was a much needed piece of legislation. So what they've done is a lot of clarifications. There were some ambiguities in the law, and some folks were interpreted in one way, some the others, and it was resulting in cases and things happening that just people were not comfortable with. So the work that they did, and it is a lot, really is welcome. And I think you'll find that once you get through the process, you are going to have an ordinance that's much more specific, not as ambiguous, and you're going to be able to do your work much better. You're coming in, as I talked with Brooke, she's new, she's coming in at a great time. She's on the ground floor because they didn't erase everything, but you're going to have to go through it from start to finish. You're going to go through basically every part of the zoning and subdivision ordinance. Some of it's going to be fine like it is with a few tweaks. Some of it's going to have some major revisions, but that's a good time to learn. So I understand there's some new board members. Great time to come on. For Brooke, it's going to be a good time because she's going to get on the ground floor. So I'm going to start a little bit with some things I just talked about to go to the second page, that the county has retained the COG to update the zoning ordinance for the county through this process that we're going to start. You folks are responsible for working with the staff and basically going through a rewrite of the ordinance. And hopefully by the time we're through, you're going to have a better understanding about this. And again, I think you will because you're going to be in on the ground floor. There are some additional meetings planned for the future. Brooke, I think if she hasn't talked with you, Gina's going to ask that you push the August meeting back a little bit. Gina's having some surgery on her neck and she's having some vertebrae fused, and that's going to put her out for a little bit of time, but she will be back with you. So I'm going to skip a couple of pages and go to the one that says, what is Chapter 160D? And as I said, this is a law that consolidates the city and county enabling statutes about development regulations. Heretofore, the cities were under one statute and the counties were under another. A lot of it was the same, but there were some differences, so no more. Cities and counties will be operating under the same general statutes as 160D. 160D provides some clarifying amendments and reforms that I talked a little bit about. I'm going to give you some examples. And it covers all land use regulations, including zoning and subdivision. So right now, Scotland County does not have what's called a code of ordinances. In this book is every ordinance that they have on record in the book. They have standalone ordinances. Your zoning ordinance is a standalone ordinance. Your subdivision is a standalone ordinance. There's some others that are probably just an ordinance by themselves. By the time you are through, anything to do with land use regulations, all going to be housed under one ordinance. So that'll be good. It also requires that you have a comprehensive land use plan. I worked on one in 2014, and the board had it, and it just never got adopted. We which doesn't make any difference now, but I think Brooke's been operating under one that's from the
1977.
70s, so it is firmly out of date. You're going to be involved after the ordinance is done and adopted. The next step, you're going to be working on that land use plan. And that land use plan is going to look at future development in Scotland County. And what it's going to do, it's going to examine things like transportation, population growth, all kinds of things related to land development. And you're going to have to put together a comprehensive plan that looks at the future. What is the future of Scotland County? Where do we want to see things grow? Where would we like to have development happen? What kind of development are we interested in? What kind of infrastructure is out there? What needs to be done? You're going to look at a lot of different things. And the reason you have to do that is your decisions about zoning are going to be tied to that land use plan, because we'll see later, you're going to have to sign some paperwork that says this action that we've taken tonight concerning this parcel, this piece of property, is in accord with our land use plan. So heretofore, it really wasn't necessary. You kind of flew by the seat of your pants, if you will. Not anymore. That plan is going to become a tool that is there that you occasionally amend and go back and redo as time changes, but it's the guiding principle about actions that you're going to take in your role in zoning and subdivision regulations. Next page, more about chapters and topics, and you'll see a list of 1 to 14 different things. These are the things that ordinance is going to cover. And so that's a list. Gene is going to guide you through each of those. Some are going, we're going to see a chart later on. Some are going to be fairly, it's going to be just tweaking a few things. Some other things are going to be major rewrites. And so she's going to get it, I'll do a little bit of that, but she's going to get into that next time you see her. The next one starts out all the way outdated in references to 153A. 153A was the county statutes about zoning and subdivision. Everything is titled 160D now. So if you happen to see some material that talks about statute 153A, that's old. That's not good anymore. Here are some examples of some things that will change. Used to, you did what's called a conditional use permit. I came in, I had a piece of property, I wanted to do something that wasn't quite what the zone was slated to have in it, but you were willing to let me as a developer do it, provided I met some certain conditions. And you would list those conditions, and I had to adhere to them. They changed the name. That's now going to be called a special use permit. Some people used to call them that. So again, what they're trying to do is, that's an example of the terminology is going to be the same. She'll get into that much more. Any kind of permits and agreed to conditions and uses, there's going to be a signed piece of paper. No word of mouth, anything like that. The chair or planning director, somebody's going to be signing a piece of paper that says, this is what we've agreed to take place. There's going to be an expanded version of the conflict of interest requirements. You guys, if you don't already, you're going to be required to take an oath of office. So that will, if you don't do that, you will. Another interesting thing is heretofore in 1 and 2 family structures, you can't anymore tell people how big that structure is. They can have as much square footage as they want or as little. And I'll give you the example that I saw the other day. We're working with Wagram. Wagram has a proposal for a small subdivision with tiny houses, 500-600 square feet. That's a new thing that's out there. That's all of a sudden people, elderly people, they don't want a big square foot house. They just want a little place. They may want it as a recreational house or just some place that they go to for a retreat. That subdivision is nothing but tiny houses. So heretofore, they might put that in the zone, and you've got to have a couple thousand square feet. You can't tell people that anymore. So it allows a little more leeway in how big the structure is and so forth as far as residents. That's just an example. The next page, when you do subdivision regulations, you have minor subdivisions and major subdivisions. And I will tell you, I forgot how big a minor subdivision is. I think it's less than 5 acres or less than 2 acres. Some places had a very expedited process. If I was doing a minor subdivision, I just had to do certain things and I could move right along and it wasn't a big deal. Other places made them go through basically what they make large subdivisions do. Won't even be anymore. If it's a minor subdivision, they're allowed to expedite things a little bit quicker than a major subdivision, and there'll be some changes there. And I don't know what your ordinance is now, but that might be something that changes. So manufactured housing has been an issue for the last 40 years. Just, I don't know again your ordinance, but some ordinances try to use age as a requirement for, we're not going to accept anything that was built before 1980. You can't do that. You've got to use something that's tied to a building code or building structure or something like that. An example is that HUD, Federal Housing and Urban Development, in 1976 issued a code that says we won't be involved in any home that's not built to these standards. And they had a set of standards. And it's basically what a building code would normally have. A lot of people use that. We're not allowing manufactured homes in our districts unless they conform to these standards. So other places have some different ones, but that's one a lot of people use. But you can't prohibit them just on the fact that they're manufactured housing. Manufactured housing is different from a modular house. But things like that, this is a case where it's going to be more of a uniform picture of what you can and can't do. You can adopt a moratorium for development regulations. All the permits will be provided in writing, either electronically or local issue a piece of paper that's signed that says this is what you can do and can't do. The next page talks about permits that you can apply. One of the changes is that there is somebody tied to that property that has to sign the paperwork. If it's not the property owner, it's an authorized agent or somebody like that. Heretofore, sometimes people did some different things where maybe the resident came in who really didn't have any say about the property and was allowed to make some changes, or somebody that was a developer that went in and really wasn't the owner of the land or the property. Probably didn't happen here. This is a case where they're tightening up. Well, no, you can't do that. The owner has to be the one, or his attorney, his designee has to be the person signing off on what we're doing. So there's no question that they can come back later and say, well, I didn't know. There's some new definitions. I'm not going to go through all of these, but this is a case where people had, when they talked about in their ordinance, and they had a definition section, something that was a dwelling could be defined any number of ways. Well, now there's a very strict definition, and these are examples of what a building is: a dwelling unit, a sleeping unit versus a dwelling unit. So you will see as Gene goes along with you that a lot of the definition section is basically already done. There will be some that you will have, but some are set by statute. So there is no ambiguity about what your ordinance says versus the city of Warrenburg's ordinance says. Everybody's going to have the same definition, which is good. Refines in enforcement procedures.
I hate to interrupt you. Is this, we're gonna go through it and then discuss any of these topics, or do we need to discuss them as we go by?
Again, I'll be glad to discuss them. but you're gonna go into much more detail, a lot of detail later on. I'll be honest with you, I might not be able, I'll be glad to take it and answer the best I can, but I'll tell you, I might not be able to give you an answer,
Okay.
which, you know.
I just didn't know if this is time to start discussing each one of these changes, because there's just, when you said that it's, gonna change where there's no set minimum square footage for structures.
Well, residential.
Right, but then you also have subdivisions who have covenants sometimes set restricted. How is that going to play in fact to the ones who currently have it to versus the new ones being developed?
My understanding, covenants are still gonna be allowable. It's not gonna change the fact that this subdivision has certain covenants for all kinds of things, not just square footage, but how you build it, what you got it looking like. Those are still gonna be allowed. It's just,
The city can't say in this subdivision, we want you to build 2,000 minimum square foot house,
right,
but the developer could.
you can have covenants that
I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
If
I
I
didn't know.
understand that you agree to, yeah, you can make it a much more restricted.
It's just the city can't designate that. Okay, I'm
Right. And I
just
think,
trying to say, because at some point in time, you can make things more restrictive, but you can't overrule, state, county law, so I'm just curious, but.
no, and that's a good example.
Right.
Usually the covenants are, like homeowners associations and stuff like that, we only want blue paint.
Yeah.
Okay, if you sign the covenant, then your house is gonna blue paint.
Okay.
That's part of the agreement, that hasn't, so stuff like that won't disappear.
I got you. That makes sense.
And I'm not gonna go through all these again, enforcement procedures. For instance, people can't go in and inspect the premises that are not open to the public without permission of the owner search. Brooke's not gonna be able to go out there, well, I'm here in Africa County and I'm demanding to see blah, blah, blah. Well, if she doesn't have search warrant or permission from the owner, she just can't do those kinds of things. So, you can issue stop orders for work, it's illegal or dangerous. So there are some things that these are more clarifications. Again, here because they weren't being applied uniformly from one jurisdiction to the other. They were just people doing different things. So the law, again, Jean's gonna get into a lot of this. She's gonna say this is the law.
So that's getting into more consistency with the authority
Yes,
aspect.
yes. And so Brooke, as your agent out in the field, there's gonna be more definitive things on her plate, or the way she does things, and some of that decision-making maybe an administrator had to make in the past, and was going, I don't know, I don't feel comfortable about doing this way. Well, a lot of that's gonna be taken out of their hands. It's gonna be very specific. This is what you can do and what you can't do. Again, puts them in a better position, puts the board in a better position. Everybody's gonna be treated the same way. And so that, I think, is one of the intentions of the law, is uniformity in how people in situations are treated. Permits, you can still revoke permits, but there's going to be a same process that everybody follows. And one thing that, for instance, if Brooke is the one that issues a permit, Brooke is the one, as I understand it, that can go in and revoke it and take action. If you're the one that issues it, you're the one that revokes it. So nobody can do something else without that the other person has done it. And so she has the authority, then it's her call to go back. Not that you have advised her, we'd like to stop this, but if it's a decision you made, this is what we're gonna do, she doesn't have the authority to second guess you and do whatever. And that's kind of what they're trying to get at. So if a permit requires an approval by the Board of Commissioners, a special use permit, then it has to go back to them to be revoked. Y'all can't do it, she can't do it, county commissioners. They're the one that approved it. They're the only one that can revoke it. That doesn't happen too often, but it does. So the next page talks about clarifying decisions, types, and hearings. So this is an example of, you have the administrative part, which is Brooks. You have the legislative part and the quasi-jurisdictional, which are either you or the Board of Commissioners. And so it's just an example of, here's a decision. Notice of violations and zoning permits. Well, usually Brooks is going to handle that. Zoning amendments and rezonings, that's going to be you. And when they talk about legislative and quasi-jurisdiction, one, legislative tends to be a public hearing or public meeting that's just gathering information, and you're going to base your decision like that. When you get the quasi-jurisdictional meetings, that's where you have people that swear to an oath, and you sit there and treat it like a court of law. That they sit there and they testify that this is what's going on, or what you will respond to this. So, but you'll see a lot more of this where, again, it's very well laid out. There is no, we use that term, ambiguity about who's responsible for what. So it sets the stage that you know, as a planning zoning board, know exactly what your responsibilities are. County commissioners know what theirs are. Brooke will know what hers are. I'm from Bladen County, and I was telling her, my commissioners, the planning board did something the other night, my fear is, was highly illegal. It does not follow this law at all. My concern as a citizen is they're going to get their butts sued by a developer, because the commission wanted the planning board to do something that wasn't their role. It was their job to make the decision. And they tried to put it back on the planning board, and it wasn't the planning, I won't get into the detail, but it wasn't the planning board's job in that case to make that decision. It put them in an awkward position. And that's just not going to happen. That just can't happen anymore. So, not to get into that, but I just thought it put the planning board in a position that wasn't their job to make that call. And it involves a developer about some land, and the denial of his request for zoning change was not handled legally. It just wasn't handled properly. And he's got every leg to stand on, as far as I can tell. But, so anyway, that's what worried the attorneys, I think. It was not clear cut who's responsible, and they're put in a position, county attorneys put in a position of defending two groups. He represents both of them. And it's an awkward situation. So that's why they were ones initially pushing some of this. They were getting put in positions that for their clients was difficult. So anyway, here's a page about public notice on the picture. This is another example. When you have a public hearing, public meeting, you actually call something different. Public notices, you gotta be specific about who you notify. There's always been a question, and this is an example. You have that little blue line parcel. Who do you contact? Well, some people would say those people across from the railroad track, they're not adjacent property owners. This clarifies that. Yeah, they are. Just because the railroad track ran between the parcels does not exclude those people from being contacted. They are adjacent property owners. So this is just, some people interpret it one way, some the other. No more. This is the way it's going to be interpreted. So that's a good example. All approvals and permits, again, I talked about it, must be in writing in electronic form. There's no more handshakes. So yeah, go ahead and do that. We got you. It's not going to be handled that way anymore. That's to cover your actions and Brooks' actions and county's actions. Next page is about down zoning property. Basically, in heretofore, you could decrease the density to allow less development than previously was allowed. And I'm not going to explain this very well because I'm not as good at this. ordinance specifies a certain density, and you want to build out a development that's less dense than what you're allowed. Well, heretofore, that was an issue, and they're gonna do some changes with that. I'm not even gonna attempt, because I would butcher this. I'm gonna go right over that, be right honest. Vested rights, their vested rights are, if I come in, I'm a developer, I give you a plan, development plan, this is how I'm gonna build something out. Heretofore, you could, some people gave them specific times, some said, yeah, go ahead, and then later on, when the developer sat there and didn't do anything for a period of time, it's like, hey, you got to move on this. Well, now that's being defined. As a building permit, you got 6 months to do something. If you're doing a multi-phase development of 25 acres or more, you got 7 years. If you don't act, we can go back and do something about it. You just can't sit there and take your time. There is a reasonable amount of time to do what we've approved for you to do and what you've agreed to do. So there's an example of that's very specific in the law. No more decisions on your part. The General Assembly's already decided that. Planning, the zoning amendments are to come to the planning board, not the county commissioner. The planning consistency statement, again, that's where that land use plan is going to come in. Somewhere along the way, you're going to sign a piece of paper that says this decision that we made is consistent with the land use plan that we have. Because somebody's going to hold you to that. So no more ambiguity. That's where you've got to have a comprehensive land use plan in order to enforce the zoning ordinance. So you're going to have the zoning ordinance done before the comprehensive plan is done. But you're going to start working on that comprehensive plan immediately. In fact, you may overlap some on that. So you're going to be working on the zoning ordinance, and we may actually start working on the land use plan. But that land use plan is going to be an integral tool in some of the decisions that you make. I think that's a good thing in that people will clearly see, and anybody wants to see the land use plan, here's a copy. This tells you, as a citizen, land developer, what our thoughts are, what we'd like to see, where we'd like to see development take place, where we're trying to put infrastructure, things like that. So it's a good tool for developers to know. Why would I want to go out and buy a parcel of land and then find out later on they really don't want anybody to build out or build that kind of facility? So they go hand in hand as you're trying to help guide what's going on in the county. They are interchangeable. There's a slide about changing to county ordinances. Again, Scotland County just has a set of individual standing ordinances. And zoning ordinance is ordinance number 7. But there's some others in there that are going to be changed too and incorporated into the zoning ordinance. The next page is currently we have a standalone zoning ordinance, and you're going to mesh the language of that and the one that's in there about ordinance number 2 talks about the development and operation of manufacturing parks. That will become part of the zoning ordinance. It won't be a standalone, it'll be part of that. Ordinance 7 establishes the planning board. That will be part of the zoning ordinance, how that's established, what your charge is, and those sorts of things. So nobody will have to go find 2, 7, 9 anymore. It's going to be one place. And that's one of the purposes of doing this. Ordinance 3 is your subdivision regulations. Again, that's not going to be a standalone ordinance. You're going to be working through, looking at the subdivision regulations, and they will be part of the zoning ordinance. Book's going to have one big thick book, right? 6 or 7 little ones over here. She's going to have one. Everybody wants to know what's going on. You're carrying around one book. You're not worried about looking at something else. The next one has several different things, and this is an example. It says county updated zoning ordinance. What Gene we talk about here those first three, Article 1, 2, and 3 are about authority, interpretation, definitions, general regulations. They're more than update. That's not going to be an intensive thing that you're going to spend a lot of time on. Again, definitions have already been taken care of to some extent by the General Assembly. Uniform, there's no debate about what a dwelling is. Dwelling has already been defined for you. You get to the next ones, talking about authority, who has certain authority, how your procedures work for permits, enforcement, all those things through Article 7. Those are all new, and I can tell you no more than I've seen. That's where you will be spending some time. There are things that you're just going to have to spend a little more time on, and you're going to have more intense discussion. The next page, you get back to the zoning map, zoning districts, and off-street parking, and so forth. There'll be some discussion, but it'll be more of an update. Brooke and I talked about the map a little bit. Map needs some work. You all need a better map than what you got.
I'm still trying to find a map.
I did one, but we can't find it. When I did the land use plan, we tried to take all the amendments that had been done, the rules zoning, and we tried to find those parcels. But I'll have to go back to the office and see if I'm sure I still got a copy, but she's been working on doing additional work in that area, finding where little changes were made, accumulating those things that we can get them all and try to get the map more up to date. And where she needs it, she needs to be able to zero in on parcels where they're very dense. Right now, she's got a paper map, and you got places that just look like a fist, and just lots on. She can't tell any detail about that. She's going to need a map that with the ability to set in on these parcels that get right down to street level views and those things. And the technology and stuff is there for that.
It's gonna be like GIS based, or is it
Yes.
just gonna be a?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. That's.
What I'm hoping to work, we do this with water and sewer. I do a lot of, in fact, I did it for long term. We just finished doing an in-depth assessment of the water and sewer system. One of the things I did was take a lot of old water and sewer maps, stuff they've done since then, and build a more current map. And where we put that is, right now it's residing on one of our map servers at my office. But they have the ability to go to a website, go to what we call a portal. And they can go in and look at that map and zoom in, they can go right down to looking at a tree on a lot. I mean, they can go all over the place and so forth. And they have the capability now of amending that as time goes on. We gave it to them on flash drive. So here it is. And so they now have something that's more current. Warrenburg's lucky, they have 2 years. Tim's got GIS background. Believe me, y'all are light years away from other jurisdictions. They don't have GIS, especially smaller towns. But we've now given them that ability that they now have, an accurate map that's up to date, that they can see where those manholes are and see. That's what she needs. She needs that kind of map that she can see the parcel, have the parcel data tied to that parcel. When she clicks on that lot, up pops the property record. I mean, that's the kind of detail she needs rather than, well, I need to know who the owner of that parcel is. Well, that needs to be tied into that where she can have that kind of information at her fingertips. So that will be something that we'll be working on. Your zoning districts that you have now, you may or may not change. That's something you need to discuss. They need to be things that you do. Then you get down to 11, 12, and 13 about development regulations, agreements, invested rights. Yeah, that's another area that's going to be some heavy lifting things. You go to the next page when it gets down to non-conforming uses and the home parks. We were talking earlier about solar regulations. A few years ago, we didn't know what solar farms were. My Lord, they came upon us and they were everywhere. And everybody struggled quickly to put something in place to control and figure out what to do about these And, you know, those things in just a few years have changed, the market's changed, what people are doing and how they're doing them has changed. So you've got something in place that will be now incorporated into the zoning ordinance, but it'll probably need a little bit of massaging to reflect what's really going on now. Everybody was ready to go rent the property out for a solar farm. You can't put it everywhere. There's certain things that you gotta have in place. But anyway, that's an example. So she will spend a lot of time with the role of the planning board. That's the next page. And again, you are going to have a much more defined responsibility, which you will have a textbook to go by that will help guide you, because you've helped put it together, and people that follow you will have something, they know what to do. So the last page talks about the role of the planning board. I'm not going to read all of these, I'll let you, but here's some examples of your role: to prepare, review, maintain, monitor, periodically update things. You're there to facilitate public engagement. When you're putting together that land use plan, you're probably going to have a couple of public meetings. Look, this is what we think. We're looking at this map of Scotland County, and here's some of our thoughts about where we might like to see, where development would better take place. You know, if it doesn't have water and sewer, municipal water, sewer, county water, you don't want to stick a big development in the middle of nowhere that has none of those facilities and have a 100-unit, I'm being exaggerating, 100-unit subdivision on septic tanks. It might not be the best thing that you want, or you might want to be careful about how a development goes around the airport, things like that. Your job is to solicit public comment and incorporate that. It's your job to recommend different policies, procedures, and changes to the county commissioners. So that'll be something. Those are roles that you have that you may or may not have been listened to because you weren't sure what your role was. She's going to spend time with you about what your roles are and what your responsibilities are, and make sure you're comfortable with knowing what it is you're supposed to be doing. You know, in all fairness to our elected officials, sometimes they don't know. They appoint you folks to things and not given a book that says, hey, did you get a book? You know, you get a little orientation and stuff like that. You know, that needs to be something that's a little more specific. So last panel is talking about the process that you need to go through. And I'm not going to read all those. She will go through and do things like text changes. Text changes are things that are pretty specific, changing the language or the intent of some article or thing like that. She'll guide you through different public hearings that you'll do, and this is the process. You're going to spend a lot of time doing a lot of work. At some point in time, you're going to take it to the public for comment, and then at some point in time, you're going to present it to the county commissioners. It is their job, like any ordinance adopted, and or if they have some changes and corrections, their time to comment is a public hearing comment, and then they will adopt it and be back to you. This is what we use. This is how we do it. This is the rules that we have. This is the process. This is who's doing what. And this is how we're going to operate. This is our guiding land use plan about what we want to see for the future of Scotland County. So that was my intent tonight, was only to give you a heads up about what was coming your way. Some of it's going to be easy. Some of it's going to take some time. It's going to have some serious discussion on your part. You're here representing the public, county commissioners. It's a big job, but she will work through it with you. And she will bring forth to you examples of suggested things that you consider. Won't give it to you that, well, you got to like this. She'll bring things to you to comment. Here's what we've crafted. What do you think? Some other places, this is what they're doing, you know, or this is how it looks. So she will guide you along and give you plenty of things to look at and work with to help make your decisions. It won't be you sitting around deciding how to write so many ordinance or something. So Jeannie's very adept at that. She has as much knowledge about this as anybody I've ever run across. And works very hard to give to you what you need and what you want. So I will stop there. I think I told Brooke if I took 2 hours, she was to send me home. I don't think I took 45 minutes probably. But wanted to let you know what was coming your way. And again, you are not by yourself. Everybody is doing this. Every county and town that has a zoning ordinance or subdivision ordinance doing the same thing. They're all scurrying around just like you are. Like I said, we got 14 or 15 that we're working on in different stages right now. So I don't feel like it's just on you, it's on everybody. But the end result, I think, will be much more helpful to everybody and how we proceed on with doing these things. And I know Brooke is new, and I told her she's in on the ground floor. This is a great opportunity for her because she can pretty much set aside what she's got. She's going to be like you in learning it from the ground up, and that's the best way. So like I said, I hope to see you in the future, probably more about the mapping part, and that comes in, they do some work with you on the land use plan. But these other 2 ladies that I mentioned, Jean and Jan and Jim, we're all J's in our department. We're all getting along older. Unfortunately, we're all gray J's, as they call us. We're gray hair, but anyway, these ladies know a lot, and have a lot of experience, and will help guide you, and I think you'll be fine. So, what can I answer or talk about anymore? I haven't been as detailed as you might like, but that is coming.
So from what I understand and what I've read, all of these changes have to be done and approved by the county commissioners and signed off on by July 1st, 22.
Actually, they were due yesterday. They were due the 1st of this month, but they've given more time. COVID messed things up a little bit. So what I think y'all have done is adopted a temporary measure. She given you an ordinance, okay. They may get a temporary ordinance to adopt that allows y'all to proceed on with your current ordinance, even though it's not compliant. But you really do have, they've given basically to the end of this calendar year. So July, a year from now, July 22. So we got a year, basically.
Yeah, that was the date that I saw somewhere in there. And
Yes.
okay.
The comprehensive plan is definitely, nobody's, you're not the only one. People were uncertain, smaller jurisdictions particularly, without any kind of planning board, or planning staff, may have a clerk. They didn't know what this stuff was. And didn't understand the ramifications. So you are not the only one in this space. Like I said, we're working on a bunch of them right now.
So this is also not just the zoning ordinances, but the land use plan. Both have to be completed and approved by that date. Gentlemen.
You're gonna have, it's gonna be a busy year. But again, I think you'll find that Gene will bring forth to you a lot of stuff that's already put together. Because again, what they've done is made this so consistent that what we've been crafting are basically very similar to each other. White Lake is probably one of our more unique towns because they're a resort town. Theirs is a little different than some others. But Bladen County's is probably gonna look a lot. Yours is probably gonna look a lot like Bladen County's. Bladen County and rural county are not much difference. And so, they've crafted, because in the laws so specific about certain things, they already have a lot of the boilerplate stuff. It's the fine tuning about districts, about things that are unique to Scotland County. Some of that stuff will be what you have to read through, but it's the tedium of reading through that detailed stuff and understanding what is this all about? What's the difference between what we were doing and what we're going to do? And that's what type of things you'll be guiding you through. So it is a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of meetings, but and I don't want to minimize it, but it's not like you're sitting there meeting 4 or 5 hours grinding through some lighting and stuff like that. It'll come to you in sections where you just need to read through, make changes that you think are appropriate within the rules for Scotland County so that it does what you need it to do for Scotland. So I'm probably not saying that very well, but my job wasn't to come scare you. It was to come assure you that, it's not, it'll be a little pain, but not a great deal. So,
Well, I think the firecracker's been lit and has gone off.
And the county commissioners will get briefed. I mean, they need to know that you're putting in a lot of effort. So it'll take, what you work on to bring to them is a big deal. It's a big deal to Brooke. She's the one that's got to go out there in the field and enforce it and minister it. So it'll be good for her too. Okay, so anything else I can answer?
When is Jean's surgery scheduled for?
The 1st or 2nd of August, and she will be out about a month at least. So you may see a lady named Jan. Jan is, they split the duties. They're both working on different jurisdictions, but they're doing the same thing.
Where are y'all at with our rough draft to start reviewing? All this is great, but until you have
Something to look at.
a plan there, the land use plan, is that something that the county's driving already through their little?
Well, we didn't have a contract to start work till just recently.
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to put the onus on
So
everybody.
is your company gonna help us create the land use plan, or is that something that counties?
Well, if I say that, I'm not sure about the contract, but I believe it's for both.
It's for both.
Okay.
So we get to beat you up for
So that's why you might see me. I did the last land use plan, and I think when it was adopted,
Right.
I would think we're going to be able to take some of that right out of it. It's 7 years
it.
old.
Some of it's already been done, I got you.
Some of it is not that much different. The other guidance about that, the planners in the School of Government, if you've ever heard of the School of Government, the School of Government's in Chapel Hill. We're the only state that has an organization like that. It is a unique organization that works for the school, the university, but they're there to work for local government in North Carolina. They're a great asset. They help put together with some of the planners across the state, kind of some boilerplate things about here's some things the comprehensive land use plan is and how it might look. We've been attending Zoom meetings on those very things. So it's the pieces that are already sitting. Hey, this is what this needs to look like. Okay, we're not having to operate in a vacuum to create something new. We've already got some pieces ready to go. So when she comes, and I'll ask her to respond to Brooke about that. How soon can you have something looking? All right, and I don't know the answer, whether she's got ready she could do it tomorrow, it might be a couple of weeks. She won't be at the office, but she will be working from home after a day or two after the surgery. So, but she may already have yours open, so I just don't know the answer.
What about the zoning map? Is that something y'all are doing as well, or is that something the county city's doing, or?
Well, I think it's part of the land use plan. And I've talked with Brooke, and I think that's one thing I am probably going to take more of the lead on. Because again, everybody working us in the same boat. Your maps, I went to Wagram the other day, and their maps are ones we did 15 years ago, never amended. And so I'm taking that and bringing it up to snuff. Yours is a little more complicated. If I can find the one that we did in 14, and we still have it, Brooke can find all the different changes. It shouldn't be too hard to get that enough together to have something to work with while you're doing the plan.
Yeah, I just didn't want, I want to make sure the ball's rolling on that because, you know, this all sounds great. You know, have those other tools so you can put them together and study it a little bit.
One of the other things besides the zoning map, the land use plan will have some maps too.
Yeah.
And what we're working on right now is probably all the plans need some of the same maps. Same data, it's just going to look different. And we're trying to put it together where all we got to do is plug in your data and it will generate the map needed. And if we're working over the Wayland, we plug in their census data, for instance, and it will generate a different map. So we're trying to make it where we can basically do it fairly quickly and get those things done expediently without reinventing the wheel for everybody.
Who's responsible for what the county or city chooses and how their GIS system is provided by or done?
That's y'all's call. That's the county's call.
The county, we say y'all, not this board call, it's county call.
Well, I would think they'd look into it. Your input. GIS, I know it, I've worked with it.
Right.
I can do some minimal stuff. You don't work in it every day.
I do.
Then you gotta work with it every day. You can't just know a little bit. So how they do it, that's tough because not many government Warrenburgs, only Polk County, Warrenburg, and Lumberton are the only three jurisdictions in our found, I take that out, Rocky County, and Richmond County, are the only jurisdictions I know of that have a GIS staff.
I like what we got. I just don't want to see it change much while I'm asking that question because I know of other county municipalities who are horrible. And they think they got something great, but they hadn't really used one to understand what they got. And I like what we got now. I just didn't know, is here an opportunity to make sure that we have to say so and not, but you know, I like what they've done so far. So.
What I envision giving them back is, again, related to the water and sewer I was talking about. It's one, an accurate map, one that's easy to use and has some flexibility that you cannot, your scale, you can't use a roll-out paper map to do something like that. She's got a book of pages, so how old are those pages?
I'll say it, yeah.
1998.
And that they penciled in, you know, that's, you can't, they need something a little more up to date. And the technology, while it's certainly not something everybody will use, we're giving back small towns maps of their water and sewer system that their code enforcement utilize.
Oh, yeah.
They don't need to learn GIS to do some looking and saying and things, and some of them, they want to look in the manhole and take pictures. Well, if they can learn a few basic steps, they can have those pictures automatically attached to that manhole as part of the data.
I understand how that works. I was just curious and wanted to throw that out there just to see if we have any problem with that more restructuring of this.
She may not be able to do it, but she needs the map in a position where she can work with it and do something. She may not be the one that edited it, but can go to somebody and say, I need this changed on this person. It needs to be this. But she needs, right now, what she has is very difficult
Oh, yeah.
to work with.
Yes, it is.
But whether Scotland County could afford a GIS person, that's why I guess they're using Tim part-time, and Tim's got a plate loaded more. I think he's done. I don't think he works for Waco anymore. I don't think he works for Madison. But anyway,
No, I mean, I've liked what they've done so far. I just hope it continues on that same path. I mean, I just didn't want them to change something. I didn't know how in depth y'all are in that respect to it. 'Cause there's a few of them out there that if we went to, I would be so
we use,
dissatisfied.
we contract with a guy that was the planner for Richmond County. He's very skilled at it. And we couldn't see that we could afford as an agency just a dedicated GIS person. We've known James Armstrong is his name. We've known James for a couple of decades. We just contracted him. He knows our area. I send him something, edit, he takes care of it, we post it, I give it to whoever. So we work that way, and it's worked for us, but you know, that'll be something that the county will have to look at, how we can do this stuff. And it may be contracted. So as long as he's got what he needs, we'll take what the decision is and say, I need this done, or I need this, whatever. So, but yeah, that's gonna be something that's very important. Okay.
You mentioned the school of government. I've been on there, and I mentioned last meeting that they do have some free videos.
They do.
Of course, they have a lot of for pay opportunities as well. And I went through and I saw some that looked like they benefit us. I mean, Sam's been on the board longer than the rest of us. And the short time that I've been on, 7 or 8 years, there hadn't been that much that's gone on. A couple of rezonings and, like you said, the solar farms. But most of us really have no idea, at least I guess, what we're supposed to do. Because like you said, we weren't handed a packet when we joined up that gave us, this is your responsibility, your job. We can look in our zoning book and it has one little paragraph.
Right.
And that's it.
Intricacies.
Are there videos? Are you familiar enough with the school of government to
Yeah,
know?
there are some videos, and one thing I think we're going to try to do again, we've done it a couple of times, is to get somebody down on a regional basis to do some training. Usually, school of government people, and we've done it in the past, invite you, either do it, we try to do it where we get several jurisdictions together to make it cost effective, because they will charge. But to get somebody to come down, and they do that all the time, and do an actual training. This is your role, go through that kind of stuff where people can sit and ask questions and those sorts of things. I will be truthful, our problem sometimes, we can't get people to come. They say they need it, we'll put it together, and then we don't get very much participation. It's just hard to get them to come down and do 5 people. They want to come down and do 20.
After this past year, I think you'll see all of us there.
Well, and I think we'll see more now that there's this more emphasis on, it's no more rubber stamping stuff and stuff like it. It's very serious business, and you need to know how to conduct a quasi-jurisdictional meeting. Those are very specific, and you can get in trouble if you don't do things the right way. So, and frankly, the attorneys don't always know. I find that small town attorneys particularly, don't always, they don't work in it all the time. And they don't, they don't rightly know sometimes the proper answer. So I will pass that along. I know it's been discussed about, the only jurisdiction to like that to take place. And I think it'd be a good thing, and maybe they could do it by county, if nothing else. Where, we've got Gibson and Waverly and Margaret all have boards that need it too. So some places are just having problems getting people. Wakehurst's having problems. They have an ETJ and extraterritorial area, and they can't. You got to have representation from there. They can't get anybody to serve. And that's a problem for them. You can't find one person from the ETJ area that's willing to be on the board. So it's more difficult in a smaller jurisdiction. Okay. Anything else? Well, I apologize that I'm the third stringer. I hope that I was able to at least give you some guidance on what's going to happen, to encourage you as these upcoming meetings come along. There's going to be a lot of stuff to go through. And I will let you know about how soon you can get something to start looking at. And I'll tell you, she won't give you all of it at one time. She'll give you, I think she's going to tackle the first 7 sections. Mm-hmm. Go through those, she'll give it to you some pieces at a time, so you don't get overwhelmed.
I think we'd all appreciate something we can study ahead of time.
Right, she will do that, absolutely. She just won't walk in and say, well, this is what we're gonna look at tonight. You'll have it in your hands, and I please encourage you. I've worked for elected officials my whole career, and I like to stumble sometimes. I don't read it till that night. Please read. Sometimes that's fine. Something like this, you really need to read beforehand so that you're ready with your questions and stuff. To make meetings be more productive and go much quicker. I wish you luck, and I look forward to probably seeing you at some point in time in the future as we go through this process, and maybe about maps or something with the land use plan. We'll be in touch with Brooke, and she will be talking with Gene about how we get to the next step and get started.
So you won't be involved in this anymore, more or less, then, right?
Probably less. Again, my expertise is mapping, and only because I've done the land use plan, and I'll probably be working on the maps for that and some other pieces of it. But my job, I'm only part-time, is more on analyzing water and sewer systems, and that's kind of my niche and where I'm working. I just happen through osmosis here, my other two colleagues. And I've sat in on some of the school of government presentations, so I did sit through some of those things all 3 days. So I would have some background, but that's the way we divided our duties. But, you know, I can talk about groundwater and other stuff where they can't. This is their bag. So one of that groundwater and water resources I can donate to you. So, one of our most important resources that we have in southeastern North Carolina that we need to protect is our groundwater. Because other places aren't going to have it. They're going to want to come get farms. So we're going to be warned about that. All right. Well, you gentlemen have a great evening. Brooke will be in touch. Now that I know her real name, and might steer her on some process or something coming together. We'll be talking a little bit more. So,
Okay.
all right, thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
I wish you luck, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you in the future.
Appreciate you.
All right, have a good evening. Thank you.
White County said, I don't know what town.
Wake County,
Glade,
where's that?
east of here, 2 counties over.
Elizabethtown, White Lake, what else is over there?
That's about it.
Where'd you preach at tonight?
You ever been to Melvin's and had a
You need
burger
to get
there?
out.
Well, do I just go out the front door?
Yes, that's fine.
Can I go out that door?
Yeah, you want to? Is this your stuff?
I'm parked over in on the parking lot. So,
That's fine.
all right, this will be good. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said 95, get up 95, head to go Fayetteville, around mile marker, I don't know. Mile marker 33, 35 on there, make a right. 'Cause, hey, you never been to Melvin, had a burger, good there?
I've been in Marvin Mountain. It's a big county, you can't miss it.
We're going the wrong direction, go down 74.
74.
Yeah.
Well, we know what's ahead of
Jim,
us.
let me ask you a question. I got these meetings set up 4 weeks apart. The last week is gonna be 5 weeks. I think we're gonna be forgot what we went through. I don't see why they didn't put it 4 nights in a row.
Because she's working on the information kind of as we go, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's not all ready for us at one time.
She's cooking.
As we're reviewing, she'll be probably doing the next section.
But we're gonna be forgot what we, the next week, we're gonna be forgot what we,
you take good notes, eh?
huh?
Take you some good notes.
I think a lot of this is gonna be kind of standard cookie cutter, self-explanatory in information. It's when we get down to where we can make
Well,
suggestions
we
and changes.
get the rezoning, I want to see 73.
Right.
I told the county commissioner, the only part of Scotland County that guy saw was working to Lombard at night. Because little old place in Steve Grove is a quarter-mile general business. I had a guy want to put 3 or 4 mobile homes, we had to get outside that quarter-mile and put 3 or 4 mobile homes.
Right.
And then Laurel Hill didn't have anything, all Laurel Hills, R1 or RA.
Well, that's where this land use plan and zoning is gonna help clarify and get all that
Then,
resolved.
hell, these guys sit down and picked out the businesses, and the county commissioner did a blatant rezoning.
Right.
And Mark Stone took the map and hid it. I told Joy about it, she found it in an envelope folded up, under some papers.
Well, we get to have some input in it now, so, is there anybody else, Brooke, in the county that's gonna be involved in this, or is this solely kind of up to us? I mean,
All up to us.
so there's not gonna be like any part of the economic development part that's gonna make suggestions or do, or
If it comes to land use, it certainly should, you would think, would.
Well, I don't know, I'm trying to figure out exactly, I understand some of this, but I don't understand it all 100% from this aspect. I'm used to reading it and trying to comprehend it, but developing it is something I've never been part of, which I'm kind of interested in. And I'm excited about a lot of the changes they've made in this because that's gonna help a lot. But I'm gonna kind of have to relearn, because I'll use it more than anybody that's in the room probably. Now, that's what I'm kind of excited about.
You've got a list of resources that you use, right?
As far as,
I guess giving us information and answering questions that you can call on if you don't have an answer and we can't find it.
Ed, Joy, Kevin.
Ed, Joy, Kevin,
Tom.
kind of what's
Jim.
here. Yeah, James. Mr. Perry?
Yeah.
Yes,
Um,
but I think Jean's gonna be a lot of help. Where we're not real sure, I think she's gonna guide us in the right direction.
And the good thing is, I'm hoping if they've done other municipalities and counties, they've run across problems we haven't, that they've already gonna probably have a suggestion for us to use, which I'm excited about because there's probably a few things that we've experienced no other county has, especially earlier this year, whenever that mess was. So, some of our problems may already be resolved and we just don't know it yet until we see the rough draft. The land use plan though, so he's just gonna go ahead and generate one based on what he understands it is
Well, he
today.
done one in 2014,
Right,
and it was presented to this board
right. Okay.
and presented to the commissioners, but it was never approved. It was never adopted. So that takes me back to the 1977 one.
I got you. So
So
he's gonna take that, try to make some updates, and give it to us, and let us start reviewing it and make a yay or
to
nay.
do it all over again.
Well, that helps because then at least gives us a general idea of what it was or intent was years ago. And then we can, adjust it versus having to actually come up with one.
Right.
That'd be a lot of work. That's good.
But Ms. Jean is asking, as Mr. Perry said, that we work with her on our August meeting, and it's on August 18th. I don't know how farther out, should we do a November meeting just to make up for that and not have one for August?
I'm telling you too, that week of August, well, that day, excuse me, I won't be available.
On the 18th.
I won't be available that night.
Well, he said her surgery was August 1st and she'd be out 4 weeks, so that puts her into September before she would be available to come here. Unless Jan came.
Yeah,
Wasn't that what you saying?
I think so. Would it work better for us to move that date or not have one in August and do another one in November? Like add a month to the bottom of the list.
Well, that's gonna put us into December right at Christmas time, then, ain't it?
That's right.
I mean,
What if we change it then?
If we change it to the 1st of September, then we would have 2 meetings in September. Whatever works for y'all. I mean, it's up to
I'd
y'all.
rather do that and get it
That
done.
may be known for retention purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, to do two,
Speak for yourself.
to do 2 in September. Okay,
yeah, plus if we're gonna have to do the land use as well,
We gotta get this done.
we really need to get on the board, get on the boat with this one.
so, I will reach out to her and see if she can do September 1st or September 8th, because we already have one on September 15th.
Sounds like a plan. I know that's looking way out, but does anybody know anything in their calendars of those 2 dates that will prohibit them from being here?
I was just looking clear.
Saying we're retired, we can be anywhere, anytime we want, can't we?
No, I can't. I got things I have to do.
Have to check your doctor's calendar.
Play poker every other Wednesday night.
I know I'm free either one of those nights.
He said that our contract, he was just given not too long ago, the contract was signed October 20th, 2020. So it was that I weren't understanding.
Yeah, it's been a while. I just don't want all this to get developed
Well,
at
the
the
thing
last
is-
minute, then we have to rush and try to put it together, because
The thing is, every other county, they have something that they've just got to update. We have nothing. Ours hasn't been updated in 41 years. So I think that's why we look like we need the most help. It's not our date of contract. Because when he said that, I started looking, it was October 20.
This probably should have been done 10 years ago.
I've been screaming for since '05. But,
It's just hard for me to work from, being what it is.
and I'll be honest with you, you know, I see a lot of county municipalities, subdivision ordinances, zoning ordinance through my line of work. And this one here, it needed a lot of clarification in it. Not only would it help me, but it's gonna help Brooke. This, like you said, way overdue, and I'm excited and glad this is gonna happen. But we got a lot of work, but the problem is they don't really get these maps and land use plan, all that stuff to us. And they're gonna coincide, it's gonna be a little tougher to.
But they keep saying it's coming, it's coming, it's coming.
That's what I'm worried about. It might be the end of the year when it comes, and then, hey, y'all hurry up and get this done, and it's just gonna be.
John, you promised me a map last Friday. You can do it yet?
Yes, I get that all the time. The difference is I'm attempting to get it done. I don't have a clue what's going on there.
We're behind on this, unfortunately, because of whatever circumstances have gotten us behind. And that's not gonna change, so the big thing is, we need to do what we gotta do. And we need to, I guess, make sure that everything rolls along as quickly as we possibly can. I mean, a year from today, a year, that's not a long time. And we actually have to get it a month ahead of the county commissioner meetings because we've got to get them approved. So basically, we have till
And they did not approve
May
the
next
last
year.
land use plan
Yeah.
for whatever reason. So if we run into that as well, we have to have
Look
time.
at the minutes from what and see what the denial reasons were.
I can get with Jason, because that's
Someone
his,
went into those offices.
Or address those issues before we go there. And the other thing too, you don't know what kind of public opposition we may get in the county, so I mean, you're right. It could get, and if anything like that, issue we had up there on 501, good Lord have mercy, it could be I don't want to go through disaster like that again.
Yeah, that's another thing too, we may need to keep in mind that there will be regular business that will come up, and we'll have to have meetings for that as well. And obviously, we can tie them in with the training meetings, but, has anybody got anything else we need to talk about that before we go on with other business? Next order, for some odd reason, the last meeting, we did not get an approval for, the May 19th meetings, and I'll take the responsibility of that for getting used to the, Robert's rules and taking care of my business. So at this time, assuming everybody has read those meetings, do I have a motion and a second to approve the meetings from May 19th?
So moved.
Thank you, Jim.
I'll say.
Thank you. All in favor? All opposed? Meetings are approved. Minutes are approved. Is there any other business? One thing I wanted to ask, and Brooke may comment on this better than anybody else. Do we need to move the meeting back to 5:15 to let everybody else get out of the building?
I would have to run a different notice for that. I was told today by Ed that a quorum is not needed because we're not voting on anything. So the 4 people don't have to be here, it could be 1 person. This is just to educate us on what's to come. So if you need me to run another notice and change the time from 5 to 5:15, that's completely up to you all. But I was not aware of the meeting that was going to be held in here today. So that was a shock to me, but whatever works for y'all, I'll do it.
Or is anybody, 5 o'clock still okay with everybody
Yeah,
else?
fine with me. Yeah, it's okay with me.
Because,
Okay,
Mr. Perry, he was here at like 4:30.
Yeah.
He just couldn't set up because they had something else going on in here.
well, I'll just have to go get with Kevin and tell him he can't have the officer at 9 o'clock.
Well, I'm gonna let you do that.
All right, any other business?
Jim, you and I talked a while ago about asking the county commissioner for a raise.
Yeah.
Since we doing this, it's not a regular meeting. I think we ought to be paid more than $25.
Yeah, a couple others of us had discussed it at the last meeting. Let's put that on the agenda for the next meeting, and everybody think about that and get an idea what they think might be reasonable. Maybe even research what some of the other boards
I
are
was
getting
gonna
paid.
say, what are other counties and
Yeah.
places
Yeah.
paying? If there's a way to find out.
Yeah, I can tell you, just going through the school, they're gonna wanna see some comparisons. So we probably need to just do maybe Richmond, Hope, or Robinson.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do, since I am officially retired as of July 31st, I will take that project on and I'll come back with some numbers for the next meeting. Anything else?
Move we adjourn.
Got a motion to adjourn, a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? See y'all whenever Brooke tells us to come back.
John, he's a surveyor.
I
He
called
doesn't do much of anything.
He's a surveyor. He sits around playing on GIS all day. And then you gotta put some stakes in the ground and tie some little rivets.
And he charges people a lot of money.
Act like a vendor all day.
After people tell me how I do my job wrong.